And I would like to introduce Edwina, my dear friend.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Edwina, and I'm a very grateful addict. And I was very nervous before I come up here, but now I'm here, I don't feel as nervous. So that's good, and thanks, Stuart. And I suppose just before we kick off, I just really have to say a big thanks to Susan. Is she here? No? No. Well, Jessie, you can tell her, and the rest of the committee. But I've had a few things going on the last couple of weeks that delayed me getting here, and Susan and Jim and the rest of the committee have just been really amazing to me and shown me nothing but love, and I'm very, very grateful. And Susan is an amazing woman, and she's put on a great show along with the rest of the committee, so I might give her. I can't see Jessie now. Where has she gone? Oh, there she is. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, and if it's okay with everybody, I might just get everyone to close their eyes down, and we'll start with a prayer, if that's okay. I read the same prayer. I was just showing it to Stuart. I wrote it out a couple of years ago, stole it from some member. But now I'm one of those people who I'm afraid not to start with that prayer. But I do love it. So here goes. So maybe close down the eyes. God, we miss you. We miss you so very much. We seem to have lost our way, and we are very lonely without you. We want to come home to you more than our hearts can bear. Thank you for a complete defeat. Thank you for the pain of the downward journey. Thank you for leading us to each other and to the path of seeking you. Please allow each of us this weekend to experience your presence, and through that to show others how to know you. May we always be in the present moment with you. Amen. So, I'm from Ireland. Some people didn't know what Ireland was yesterday. They were asking me, I'm from Ireland. Ireland? Is there a place called Ireland? But, yeah, I'm from Ireland, and I was supposed to arrive here Tuesday. Well, my plan was to arrive here Tuesday. Actually, my plan was to arrive in 2020. And my God, did that get changed. So we booked the flights in 2019 for 2020, and then we rebooked for 2021, and then we rebooked for 2022, and then we rebooked for last Tuesday, and then I had to change that to Wednesday, and then I had to change the Wednesday flight to Friday. And then I left Friday morning, and what was meant to be a 12-hour plane ride to get here took 24 hours. And when I got here, my luggage was in a different country. But I'm here. And it's so funny, because on the way I said to Joanne, when we landed, my good friend Joanne came with me, and I said to her, to top this off, the luggage is going to not be here. And it wasn't. But anyway, it did show up, so I'm really grateful for that too. But, you know, I'm going to touch on just like what we all touch on. My story stays the same, what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now. And I know it might sound a bit cliche, but my God, has God turned up in my life and showed off. Jackie spoke yesterday, and she said, if there was a topic on the story, on the share, what her topic would be, and hers was a bridge back to normal living. And I was saying to Joanne this morning, if there was one for me, I would just say how God has really turned up in my life, shown me him, it, whatever you want to call it, and showed off. You know, and that has been my journey. I really, really, I'm so grateful for what I found in Cocaine Anonymous, because I found it by coming here. A woman was wearing a grey short yesterday. What did I say, Joanne? Yeah, my experience brought me here, and your experience kept me here. And that's been so true. And look, I grew up in Dublin, and I come from a family of alcoholics. grandparents alcoholics, their parents alcoholics, lots of alcoholics in Ireland. I used to think that there was only alcoholics in Ireland, and then I started travelling the world and realised we were sure everywhere. Like I thought we were very unique, us Irish, but we're not. And I was born into a family of 7 girls. So 7 girls, and half of us were drug addicts, alcoholics, and the other half are not. So, and I figured that one out. I had to stop blaming the parents. But anyway, look, I grew up in that kind of environment, and as we know, like growing up around alcoholism, it has an effect on the family. And my mother had like 4 kids by the time she was 21, and she just wasn't able to cope. And her solution to that was to kill herself and her 4 kids. And she gave us all an overdose, and we were taken into care. The stuff that goes with that. And I'm not trying to blasé over it, but I do mention stuff like that because I know from a very young age I never felt good enough part of all that stuff that the language that we hear around here. And I have always been fighting to be seen, fighting to be heard, fighting to be loved, all that kind of stuff. But anyway, that's the way it was growing up. So it was very dysfunctional. And, by the time I was 15, my father committed suicide. He also was one of us. He had rang me and told me he was going to do it. I didn't believe him. He'd done it anyway. And, I lived then through my teenage years thinking, why didn't I just call an ambulance? Why couldn't I, why didn't I just... So I was full of all that stuff. And, a lot of people can remember when they first pick up a drug or a drink. They can remember, they talk about like this effect and the feeling of it and everything. I can never remember that stuff. But I do know I was only 9 when I tried alcohol for the first time. I remember vomiting. It was my older sister's 16th birthday. They were all drinking vodka and I tasted it and I was vomiting. And I do know by the time I was 12 or 13, I was smoking hash, taking ecstasy, and that kind of stuff was going on, and always drinking. And by the time I was 15, my youngest sister was born. So I seem to always relate things to when kids were born, because everybody in Ireland has lots of children. But when my youngest sister was born, I was smoking heroin. And, it's funny, I was only 15. I have a 15-year-old daughter. She's almost 60, and I get so emotional when I look at her and think when I was her age, I was having sex with older men. I was on drugs. I was drinking. I hadn't a clue, and I was just left in the world like that. And, like most people's story, I love the effects produced. I went with it. I learned when I come into recovery that, like, when I look back, I knew deep down inside this isn't the way the world was supposed to be. I heard that being said in my early recovery, and I really related to that. I knew always this isn't the way the world is supposed to look like. But I didn't have any other way. And I absolutely loved how drugs made me feel. I loved the relief from my mind. I loved the freedom from myself, the relief of the bondage, or whatever way you want to call it. I didn't know any of that either, by the way. But anyway, as I said, I knew deep down inside this isn't the way it was supposed to be. And I always wanted better. I always wanted better for myself. I looked at my older sisters and they looked so much worse than me. There was homelessness and, prisons and all that stuff. And I was always a little goer. There was always something in my little spirit that just wanted to do a little better. And I wanted to stay in school and I wanted to do all that stuff. But, so I did try to do that along with the other stuff. And then by the time I was 18, I was crossing the bridge here today. I don't know what you call that bridge there up in Congress. And I was looking down thinking, by the time I was 18, we have a similar bridge, not as fancy, but anyway, in Dublin. And my way to cope to situations in life was to die. I don't know if anyone else is as dramatic as me, but when I'm tired, I want to crash my car into an oncoming lorry, because I just want to die. But back then, my reaction to deal with life was just to jump into the river and die. And, you learn when you come in here, I didn't really want to die. I just didn't know how to cope with my mind. And, it came out of that, and the doctor said, she's like her father. She's suffering with depression. She has this, she has that. And I knew then at 18, I am not depressed. There's something else going on inside me internally, whatever. I knew I wasn't depressed. But, they prescribe you lots of nice things, and they give you all these things to try and make you feel a bit better. And, of course, none of it works. And the progression is growing. And then at 19 I decided, I'm going to marry a farmer, and I'm going to leave the city, because that's the problem. I'm going to leave the shameful family, because they're all the problem. My mother was my problem, my father for abandoning us, my sisters for being the way they were. And I said, I'll move a couple of 120 miles away from Dublin. That's a long way away for me. And I'll go there, and that will make me better. And I swear to you, I had this vision in my head. I was going to move there. I was not going to take drugs or alcohol anymore. And I was going to milk cows, make daisy chains, have babies, bake bread. And life was going to be wonderful. I really was so deluded, And off I go with my little bags down to Tipperary, to the poor unfortunate man that I married, who I'm so grateful to, even though he did leave me eventually. He got sent. But anyway, I moved down there, and it's like, God, I don't know about anybody else, but the disease is just on you, and it's like discontent of the relationship wears off so quickly. The shine of everything we get. I'm sure everybody here has got lots of nice things in their life, but the shine just wears off so quickly. And although I had stopped taking what I could consider hard drugs, because I don't know about anybody else, but I used to think I was clean when I was just maybe snorting cocaine at the weekend and drinking alcohol, but, that was okay, And, the irritation, the resentment in me, the fears, all the words we learn when we come in here is growing inside me, and I'm getting more and more twisted up. And the only way to relieve that for me was to drink and use more. I didn't know a life without drinking and using. And, I thought, I got married, that will make me feel better. Of course, that didn't. I'll have a baby, that will make me feel better, because that will definitely make me not use anymore, because I won't do what my mother done, and I'll do a better job than her. I'll show them all, and that wasn't to be the case. And I often share, but I always share that my maternal instincts, which are probably the strongest instincts on the planet, was not enough for me to stay clean even during pregnancy. That this disease that we suffer with is much greater than that. It's really sad, really, that I have a baby growing inside me, and my mind tells me, just use today, just today. You can stop tomorrow, it'll be okay. And then you're 3 months and 4 months and 5 months, you'll get clean just before you have the baby, and then you're using on the way into the labour ward. I mean, it's really sad, and it's the insanity, isn't it, of the disease. And Ella was born. She's almost 16. She was born almost 16 years ago. And Matthew, that's my ex-husband, says, if you don't go to treatment and get yourself sorted, I'm going to leave and take the baby. So off I go to treatment. And while there, I went to some meetings, no Cocaine Anonymous, by the way, where I lived back then. And, I heard lots of stuff in meetings, Didn't hear much about sponsors or steps or any of that stuff. Don't know if I was ready to hear it either, so obviously not. But anyway, I went to treatment, but I always had a reservation. Alcohol is different. One day somehow I will be able to drink successfully. And it says it in the book, doesn't it? It's a great obsession of every abnormal drinker that one day, somehow, Edwina will be able to manage and control her drinking. And of course, I got out 6 months later, pregnant on my second daughter, Lucy, and my mind told me, just have one. We were in Spain on a family holiday, Ella, Matthew, pregnant. And my mind told me, just have one sangria. It looks so nice on the beach. You're pregnant, you've learned enough in AA, you've went to meetings every day, blah, blah, blah. And I picked up the drink, and I didn't get sober and clean for another 6 years. I didn't know about allergies or obsessions or any of that stuff. And, in those 6 years, so much happened. And 6 years is not really a long time when you look back. So I am really grateful for my journey. It's funny, that promise, you won't regret the past nor wish to shut the door. And I really have came to acceptance for my story. I love my story now, actually, even the dark stuff. But anyway, I ended up, my ex-husband leaving me, calling social services in because I wouldn't give him the children to get the kids removed. I was really, really angry. driving the car, crashing the car out of anger, wanting to crash it into people's doors. Don't know about anybody else, but I get a little bit angry when things aren't going my way. Asked Joanne this morning when I was having a hair problem. She left. Said she was going for a cigarette. She probably needed a tree after me, but anyway. Yeah, he left and he got the social services involved to take the kids. And, and I could talk for ages, I suppose, about what happens in the middle of that. I was using every day, obviously. And then when someone leaves, it's funny. I need to stop with the story. I don't know about anybody else, but the more sober I get, the more my story actually does change a bit, because you see the truth. And the truth is, he didn't leave. I fucked him out. Excuse my language. Johnny is counting how much I curse. He reckons I curse a lot. So that's only one. That's not too bad. So I asked him to leave politely. No. But I always said in my story that he left me. He didn't. I made him leave. And it was great for me, because when he left, then it fed into my using. Now I can use more. Now it's all his fault. Now I'm a single mother on my own. And that wasn't the truth, That man was afraid of me. He was afraid of me. I never hit him. Maybe once. I don't think so. I don't think so. No, I don't mean to laugh at domestic violence, but I think I did. But, I can't help but say, I smashed his dreams. That he was a really, really good man. He wasn't an addict. He wasn't an alcoholic. He wanted to just get married, have a family, and go to work every day and provide for family. And he did do that. And this disease just come in and wiped it all from him. And if I was able to tell you a story from active Edwina addiction, you would blame him. You would say he's the bad person. Because I don't know about anybody else, but I'm a really convincing actress when I need to be. And and that's the reality. It wipes everything from you. It wipes everything, the people from you, your careers, whatever. Smiles off the people's faces around you. Not many people smiled in my company when in my last time of using. But before we did break up, I only ever seen that man cry twice. We were married for 12 years. Once when his father died, and once when he was asking me to get clean. And he was crying in the bedroom. And I said, please, just give me one more chance. I promise you, just one more chance. I'm done. I won't pick up again. I promise you. And in my heart, I really meant it. And as soon as I knew I had him and he was going to say okay to me, my head straight away said, I hope he goes off now with the lads so I can get a bag. Just one more bag. And that's the reality of it. And that's what happened, And, he did leave, and as I said, the services got involved, and none of that stuff was enough to get me clean and sober. I was asked to go and give urines in the courthouse. I couldn't give clean urines. I used to take Lucy, who was only 3 at the time, to come in. I tell the child she had a kidney infection. She needed to wee into the yolk. I don't say that with pride. I say that because that's not the mother who I ever wanted to be, but that's what I would do to get one more. And, yeah, it's funny, when she used to come in to do the urine, she'd say, Mommy, I'm not sick. I'm okay. And I'd say, baby, you are. It's horrendous, really. But anyway, she's really good today. But so that's what happened. So I ended up in a coma. Woke up out of the coma. My mind didn't tell me, Edwina, it's probably a good idea to get clean now. My mind said, well, you're in the hospital. Just use one more time, because if anything happens, you're here now. The doctor can hook you up. And I tell that story because what more is going to take to convince me maybe today is the day to stop, None. It's always a good idea to use. So what happened February, my sobriety birthday is April 28, 2014, but in February 2014, and the months leading up to it, every single day, down in Tipperary, which is, as I said, 120 miles from the city, and I liked the drugs in Dublin City, because I used to think by the time they got to Tipperary, they were not strong. So I used to take the drive every day, 2 hours up, 2 hours back to use, and just buy enough for that day, because the next day I was stopping. I don't know if anybody can relate to that, but the fucking insanity of it, it was mental. So that's what I used to do. So this one particular morning in February, I wake up, I'm dying sick, I have physical withdrawals, I'm lying in the bed, and the battle is on. You know, the battle where your head is saying, use, you need to use, and your heart is saying, I don't want to use, I really don't want to use. And I'm in that in the bed, and the kids came in to me this morning, and Ella was like 6, Lucy 3, and they're like, Mammy, are you getting up? And I said, go downstairs with your sister, I'll be down in a few minutes, just give me a few minutes. And, you know, an hour passes, 2 hours pass, I'm in the bed, the battle's on, shaking cold, withdrawals. And then, you know, we give in and we say, okay, I'll use just for today, we'll do that stuff tomorrow. And I text the dealer, ask him, can he meet me? He says, yeah. And all of a sudden, a bang of power. Get up, get dressed, have a shower, feed the kids, able to do all of that stuff. For a woman who was stuck to the bed before, because that's what drugs done for me, it gave me lots of power, you know, to be able to do the stuff I couldn't do for myself, which in the end was just to even see to me kids. In the end was just to try and connect to the things I loved most in the world, because this had disconnected me so much from that. And I got up that morning, I dropped the 2 kids up to a childminder up the road, and I was pulling away. It was a cold morning, and I looked in the mirror, and Lucy was I caught a glimpse of her in the mirror, which I probably did most days anyway, but for whatever reason God entered my heart this day. And I looked in the mirror, and she had a red nose, she was all cold, and she was crying, because like I had said, I don't know about anybody else, but I'm a sergeant major type woman when things are not going, you know. And I was screaming at them that morning, come on, get out the door, come on, get into the car, put on your seatbelts, come on, come on, come on. It's horrendous. Like, I was driving away and I thought, those children would be so much better off without you. You were the most useless mother to them. You were a useless wife. You know when the uselessness part kicks in, where you just feel like a big little useless lump of whatever. And all the way my mind was saying, and I just kept thinking, just get the bag into you. If you just get the bag into you, you'll be okay. You'll be able to come home. You'll be able to connect to the kids, maybe take them to the park, play a little game. That's all I wanted in the end. There's no big parties. They were well gone for me. But I just wanted to be able to sit down and connect with my children. I just wanted to be able to tell them that I loved them, because I did love them, but I wasn't able to love them because I didn't know how to love them. I didn't know how to be present. I didn't know how to connect like that anymore. It was horrendous. And I get up and your man, he gives me the bag. I'm using in the car. And I often share this about trying to put a word on what happens. If for anyone that's, you know, yet to have a spiritual awakening, it's something that's so unique, and words can't say what happens. But what happened to me was something like this, if you were to word it. I was broken enough, obviously, for a little bit of light to shine in, and for the very, very first time I realised that I'm the problem. It sounds so simple, and people can say it, but to actually have that experience in your heart and really, really know it is the most profound thing still to this day that has ever happened to me in my whole entire life. I realised in that moment, you are the creator of all this, Edwina. You are the one who can only change this. Nobody else. And for the first time, all the blame was stripped. Now, of course, it returns, because that's why we have a program. But in that moment, I realised it's not their fault. It's not his fault, their fault, my ma's fault, my sister's fault. It's no one's fault, you know. And I made a decision then I was going to get help. Now, that was February. It took me to April to get detoxed and clean. And even though something had changed in my heart, I was still in the obsession. So I'd been locked away in somebody's house to try and get clean. And I'm texting dealers to, you know, throw it in the window, throw it in the back seat of a car, do all that kind of stuff as we do, even though, you know, I was ready to go to treatment. And I went. And treatment is great. Look, they're great places to give you the break to get clean. But I knew, because I had been to them before, that something had to change this time. And guess what happened while I was in there? They talked about 3 fellowships that we had to attend, AA, NA and CA. And I said, I'm not going to CA, because who do they think they are with their own fellowship and all that? Snobs. Oh, it's so funny because even now, 8 years clean, God always knows what's best for me. And it's easy when you get a little bit of experience to trust that. But at the time, I was like, no, I'm not going. Anyway, it was compulsory. You had to go. And guess what happened when I went to my very first meeting? I heard a message from a woman who read from the big book, and the message obviously had depth and weight because it was enough to have removed. Well, it didn't remove the obsession there and then, but it had enough to keep me there 8 years later, and it has been enough to have my obsession eventually removed. And it's funny, she read from the doctor's opinion, and if there's anybody new, is there anybody actually who hasn't started the steps yet? No? Okay. Welcome, my friend. She read apart from the doctor's opinion, and she read, that men and women drink essentially because they like the effects produced from alcohol, full stop, Edwina. Stop blaming, stop this. And then I was like, yeah, I love the effects produced. And we know what it goes on to say, that we are restless, irritable and discontented. Another way we say it as well at home is bored, pissed off and ungrateful. That was more my language. And I was like, God, yeah, that's me. So anyway, she went on to say what it says, unless we can experience an entire psychic change, there's very little chance for recovery. I asked her that day, will you help me when I leave here? Of course, she said yes. And that's what happened. I stayed there for another couple of weeks. And then I said to her, how many times will I come visit you? She lived in Dublin. There was no Cocaine Anonymous outside of Dublin at the time. She said, you need to drive up to me twice a week. And I thought, drive all the way up there twice a week? She said, did you not tell me you drove up every day for a couple of years to buy drugs? So, of course, I drove up twice a week, and, I started my journey with her going through the steps. And it's funny, when I got to step 10, with that woman who was 7 or 8 years around, she told me, is Randy leaving? Oh, my God. I just wanted to embarrass him. Can't believe it. He said to me just before I came up, don't suck or I'll have to go. Now I'm trapped in my mind, Randy. Thanks for that. But that lady went back drinking when I was on step 10, and she said to me, I'm drinking, but I'm still going to sponsor you because I'm a crack addict and I'm okay to drink. No joke. No joke. And thankfully, because I'm a people pleaser, but thankfully, God done for me that day what I couldn't do for myself, and I said, no, I'm going to move on. But somebody put me in touch with another lady who I probably would have not met, and they said, this lady will help you. So she started to help me, and she took me, back through the steps, and we had an experience, and I started helping other women, and the journey was going and going. And she's married to a member in Cocaine Anonymous as well, and one day she called me up and she was, complaining about the husband, as we do. And she said, I need to be a little bit more gentle with him. Now, this was a woman who I thought knew absolutely everything about me. She said, I need to be a little bit more gentle with him. We were in Dublin city centre today, and we were walking down the road, and her father-in-law, his father, had been murdered 10 years previous. She said, and the lady who murdered him was on the street, and he seen her, so he got, a bit fucked up. And I said, oh. So for some reason, God decided to keep this story until that moment, but the lady that was on the street who had murdered my sponsor's father-in-law was my sister. No, it's a shocker, isn't it? And we never knew. So I said to her, oh, I think we're going to have a problem. I don't need to make light of the story because it's actually a really beautiful story. It's just one of many ways how God just works in people's lives. So she said, I'm going to have to check with my husband, to make sure it's okay that you still come to my house and mind our children and do all the things you do. But she's married to a really good man in Cocaine Anonymous who said, well, it's nothing to do with Edwina. She didn't do it, And in actual fact, he said, it was pure alcoholism. They were both alcoholics. They were living together. Fight broke out. Somebody ended up dead. And she done 10 years for manslaughter. And so we continued our relationship, you know. And I made me amends with my sisters, and she stayed homeless when she got out of prison. She was one of us. She's an alcoholic, roaring alcoholic. Funny, roaring alcoholic. She's like, you know, the one of those crazy people you see on the street. She was one of them. Like a good crazy. And unless she's your sister, then it's not so good. But she got really sick towards the end. She got liver failure, and 5 years ago now, and or 4 or 5, and she was dying, but she didn't want to go to a hospice, so she came up to my mother's house, and we decided we were going to nurse her at the house. She was twisted up like all of us with resentments towards the mother. So the mother was cast out, and me and my sisters minded her and nursed her. And it was almost 3 weeks that we got to have with her. And I often share, when I used to pray, I don't know about anybody else, but my prayers, I never, when people say pray for them, my prayers are very different, but I did always say a prayer that she wouldn't die alone on the streets, because she was always alone. She wouldn't die alone, and she would die knowing that she was loved. You know, she came home for those 3 weeks. We got to have that with her. We hadn't had it for many, many years because she was homeless, and we got to mind her. And just before she was dying, I knew she was terrified to die. I often share to people how privileged we are to get to do a 4th and 5th step, and how privileged we are to get to go and make things right for the past. Because to see somebody dying on their deathbed full of resentment and fears of going to hell for what they'd done, because that was her little fears. She was afraid she was going to go to hell for the sins she had committed. And, you know, and I was trying to talk the programme-y kind of language to her, you know, like, and she didn't understand it, but I knew she was terrified. And the last couple of days before she died, she was so afraid. And I said to her, Ashlyn was ringing me every day. She couldn't come and see me because, you know, I have respect for her husband. So she used to call me every day, "You okay? How's things going up at the house?" Very intense house. Other addicts there. It's very intense. My anger was building towards my sister, who was another homeless addict, because we wanted her to be part of it, but it was very toxic. And my mother, who was in active addiction at the time. And I said, you know, she's afraid. She's afraid to die. And she said, she rang back this one particular day, October 12th. And she said to me, "Anthony wants to know, can you come up and see her?" Now, he hadn't seen her since the trial. And I said, he can. Yeah, he can come up. So I said to her, Tanya was her name, "Tanya, Anthony Jr. is going to come up and see you. Please don't be afraid. He just wants to sit with you for a few minutes." And she was in and out of the morphine at that stage. But he came up, and I brought him up to the bedroom to her, and I left the two of them in the room for a few minutes. And he came back down to us a little while later, and I was downstairs with my mum and sisters, and I said, "What did you say to her?" And he said, "I told her that I forgive her. I told her not to be afraid to die, that I know that alcoholism had a hand in all of this, and that I also know that if my father hadn't died in the circumstances he died in, I wouldn't have got clean and sober for my children." And she died a couple of hours later, October 13th, just after 12 that night. And, you know, it's just one of many ways that God has come into my life, brought two very broken families together to bring that healing. It would have never took place if that had been disclosed from the beginning of the relationship, you know. And I often, like, you know, share how God turned up and showed off. And my mother said to him just before he left, "Thanks so much for forgiving me, baby. Thank you so much for forgiving me, baby." You know, she got something from that, obviously, too, you know, and the fact that she died a few hours later, she was able to let go. So, you know, that's one of many ways that God has turned up and showed off. And he is an absolute role model to us all, that no matter what, forgiveness is possible. I mean, no matter what, forgiveness is possible when God enters the heart. And he can do so much miracles. And, you know, I mentioned there was no Cocaine Anonymous where I lived at the time, so I used to be driving up and down. Of course, that changed. and I suppose that's, the vision for you speaks about it, doesn't it? So I was attending AA. They had a group conscience about me at the AA local meeting and said I was poaching newcomers. They didn't really want me to come back. And I was poaching the newcomers, if you want to call it poaching. But that's where I met most of the women I sponsored. I went to AA there and I started sponsoring some women. And of course, a fellowship grew up among us, And we opened up our first CA meeting in Tipperary 5 years ago. Yeah. And that was the first meeting outside of Dublin. And then we opened up a second meeting in Tipperary. And then we opened up a third meeting in the next city over in Limerick. And then we opened up a fourth one in the next city going west in Waterford. And then we opened one up in Cork, which is down south. And now there has been, I don't know, there's maybe 15, Joanne, would I be right, of new meetings that have sprung up. And that's all all as I have ever done in Cocaine Anonymous since I was asked to come in here is turn up. That's all I've ever done is just turned up and said yes. Anything I've been asked to do, I've said yes. I was a desperate, dying woman inside. I would have done absolutely anything I was told to do when I come around here. I often hear people, saying, no, it wasn't like that for me. I knew I was going to die. I didn't even mind dying. It's funny, when Tanya died, when my sister died, I got to be with her in the room when she was dying. Everybody else was in bed. And I was playing music on my phone. I was playing that song, Edelweiss. I don't know if anybody knows it, from The Sound of Music. Because we used to watch it as kids. We loved it together. And I kept playing that song to her. And I was lying beside her, and she took 3 big breaths. And I felt her energy leave the room. I have never been attached to a dead body since. I've no attachment to the body. I felt her spirit and her energy leave the room. It was the most beautiful thing to be a part of. Now, I know if I wasn't clean and sober and able to see and experience and feel that, that would have been a whole different story, that you'd be hearing about that. But I felt it happened. And it happened again very recently, tomorrow, 2 weeks ago. That's what our delay was, coming here. 25 years ago, my aunt died, and my mother adopted a little boy who was severely handicapped. So he's my first cousin, but he's also our brother. We've had him for 25 years. And not Monday gone, the Monday before, he had an epileptic seizure, and he went into a cardiac arrest. And the oxygen stopped going to the brain, and he was on a life support. And we had him on the life support for a couple of days. And the doctors told us, obviously, we were to switch it off, which we did. And then I had the funeral and stuff. And it's funny, I've been sharing a lot lately how I've been struggling with me. Resentment has creeped back in a bit with my mother. I don't know about anybody else, but resentment has a sneaky way of coming back in at you. And me things were growing around me mum again, and she was away when this happened. And obviously she was in Turkey. We got her back into the country, obviously, before we switched off the machine. But Joseph was his name. He's gone, obviously. But I'm like, even in death, even in what he done, he's always brought so much gifts into our life. He was a non-verbal boy, but he understood everything. He was so clever. And he was so present to every moment. And I done the eulogy on Thursday, when I thought I'd be here in Austin preparing for this. Instead, I was preparing for the eulogy, And I done my sister's eulogy as well. And it's funny, I learned how to do eulogies by sharing in Cocaine Anonymous, but it's not really funny, but you know what I mean. Only you would laugh at that, I was writing his eulogy out, and it came to me. I thought, my God, was he really the person with the disabilities? Or are we not the people with the disabilities? He had no resentments. He had no fear. He had no judgments. He lived exactly in the present moment. He seen a cup of tea coming and he was delighted with his little life. He seen you coming, he just wanted a kiss and a hug. He was not the one with the disabilities. We're the ones twisted up with resentments, fears, angers, judgments, lack of courage, all them things. And I brought that to the eulogy, and I thought if everybody could just walk a day in Joseph's steps of just being in the moment, being all loving, all kind, all gracious, the way, what Jackie said, the way God always intended us to be anyway. You know, and I thought in that moment, and all them moments coming up, again, the little boy brought gifts into our life. I had nothing but only love for my mother for the last week or two. It's terrible that it takes somebody to die for us to be able to, but I've really seen how she'd done her absolute best for us when we were children. She was only 21 when she tried to kill us, like, but she has constantly whipped herself all her life because of it. And she doesn't get to come in here and do what we do. She doesn't get to come in here and get rid of all that stuff. Tanya didn't get to come in here and get rid of all that stuff. My father didn't get to come in here to get rid of all that stuff. But I got to come in here and get rid of all that stuff. I get to stand up here with you. I get to let go. I get to be reborn. I get the privilege of living 2 absolute wonderful lifetimes in one. I am so grateful for my dark past. I am so grateful for all the rejections I've experienced in all my life with marriages and fathers and mothers and brothers and sisters, because it leads me here to know that nobody can give me what I need, only God. Nobody can give me what I need, only God. And I've tried it, like all of us in other ways, and nothing has ever fulfilled me more than God. And I was telling Joanne on the way here, I was Jim up to me to first class, he's a legend, but I was up in first class, poor Joanne was way down the back, I had to get a bus to go visit her, and and I was thinking all the way over here, I was so looking forward to the journey. Maybe that's why God made it 24-hour when he reckoned I needed a bit more time by myself. But I was so looking forward to the long journey just to get present. And I experienced the same thing after my sister died as well, even in the pain. It's so beautiful. It's so beautiful. And it wasn't that I was all sad and in that. I was just raw. I was raw, and I just felt God's hands around me. The way I've always felt God around me, if I can just be quiet enough to accept it and feel it, you know. And I'm surely definitely coming up to near time, like, but, you know, I can't not do a share without talking about me girls. Because my family is full of addiction. My other sister, who's homeless at the moment, we might keep her in our prayers, Sabrina, she has not seen her 3 children in 6 years because she lives rough on the streets in Dublin, and she hasn't made it to the rooms yet. But my girls get to whip the benefits of Cocaine Anonymous. My girls get to experience what we do in here. We had nowhere to have our first CA meeting in Tipperary, so we had it in my house. You know, my girls have been part of Cocaine Anonymous just as much as I have been. On Christmas Day 7 years ago, we had a women's CA meeting at my house on Christmas night. That has turned into every Christmas. People come, not only women, men too, and they bring their children. My kids think they're the kids' sponsors. And they talk the lingo. I mean, they really talk the lingo. I have to tell you this funny story because it's coming to me. Lucy, who's 12, was in the back of the car a couple of weeks ago, and I was talking to some woman on the phone who was talking about, you know, wanting to drink, blah, blah, blah. And Lucy says, when I get off the phone, they've heard a bit of inventory. No, that's not very. But she said, Mammy, she's not ready to stop drinking. And I said... Lucy! And she goes, I mean, who hides bottles of wine in their cupboards if they're ready to give up drinking? Nobody. Oh, yeah, no. But they are great. They are really great, them 2 girls. And Ella, who's my oldest girl, 16, who's probably the, you know, difficult age. You know, there's been a couple of little stories lately because sometimes I don't know about anybody else, but my mind still tells me I'm not good enough as a mother. I'm not good enough as a partner. I'm not good enough as a sponsor, as a friend. It attacks me all the time, you know. I don't feed it obviously as much, but it sometimes, when it really wants to get me, it attacks the mother in me. It tells me I'm not a good enough mother. I fucked up my kids. There's 3. You know. But Ella done a project 2 years ago, before she got 16 and cool. And it was the most influential person in their life. So I'm thinking it's going to be, I don't know, one of the Kardashians or whoever they watch on reality TV. And she said, "No, ma'am." I said, "You." And I said, "Really?" She said, "Yeah." I said, "What did you say?" She said, "Well, I didn't tell them you were in Cocaine Anonymous, but I told them you help people who are like homeless people. And you're very kind to people. And you always feed people when they come here. And you always read to them." And that's just like, I could tell hundreds of lovely stories about how Cocaine Anonymous has shown my girls how to grow up, because that is the truth. Cocaine Anonymous, I give credit to God, I give credit to, obviously I put in the footwork, as we know I got here, but really anything I have learned, or anything I say, I've just learned from the people who've gone before me. I'm not that clever. Anything I've learned from the people who've shown me how to be around here. I've learned because I've said yes and I've turned up. I've learned because I've wrote a lot of inventory. A lot. And I've had to go back and do other bits of work. I went out to Donna and Terry a couple of years ago in Arizona, and Terry and Donna have heard a few of my stories, and they were like, "You probably should go and do some trauma work." And I'm like, no, the book says everything will answer all my problems, so I don't need to go anywhere. But we have to do that when the journey goes on. But for me, the first few years of my recovery to get clean and sober was just constant thought of others, constant work with others, turning up at meetings, sponsoring other women, open up meetings, doing service. I was only 3 years in and I was the delegate in Ireland. I put so much work into getting drugs. If I could just put a quarter of that into live the way I live my life in Cocaine Anonymous, I reaped the awards. And that's really it.